So my name's Peter Ayton. I'm Professor of Psychology here at City University, and my main area of research interest is the psychology of human judgment and decision making. Usually when people make a decision, there's uncertainty surrounding their choice that they're making. So which options you're contemplating, what they'll actually be like when you obtain them. So there's always uncertainty of some sort surrounding decisions. And sometimes that's very explicit and prominent. So, imagine a contestant on the game show Deal or No Deal. They're going to have to decide whether to take a certain amount of money, which they can be sure they will get, or take a gamble and possibly get more money and possibly get very little money. Lots of choices in life are a little bit like that, not quite so stark perhaps, but there'll often be occasions where you can, go with the devil you know, or take a chance on something that you don't know.
Very few people realise, unless they've actually been into a newsroom, how many decisions, large and small, get taken every day. I used to edit the Saturday edition of the Times, which is a big edition of the paper. It's the main weekend edition of the daily paper. And with more than 100 pages in it, sometimes on a big edition. And I once had a organisation scientist follow me around for the day that was the busiest day of the week, which is Friday, and it's a kind of 12-hour day if you're editing the paper, and he calculated that for the main hours of the day, the main 8 or 9 hours of the day, I was making a decision every, I think it was 4.5 minutes. Now, some of them are quite small decisions, quite trivial. Do you want sugar in your coffee or whatever? But, some of them are quite large. What story goes on the front page? How do you play it? What the headline is? All these kinds of things. So editors do make decisions all the time, and virtually none of them are what you would call perfectly prepared decisions, where you have all the information you could possibly want to decide something. You're virtually always making decisions quicker than would be perfect, and probably with inadequate information. And that's the science that you get used to, trying to make the best percentage of decisions you can with what you've got available. When I make a decision, I try to make sure that it's not being taken either by the head or by the gut. You usually start with a gut instinct about most things. I think people, if they're honest, you have a gut instinct about something. I try to train myself to stop my gut instinct actually dictating the decision. I don't necessarily promise that I always succeed.
I'm not really sure. I think it is very easy for people, or certainly it is for me, to feel completely overwhelmed by the amount of information that's out there. And one of the big difficulties is weighing up the information and trying to decide which bit of information I'm going to trust. So, do you trust what your friends are telling you? Do you trust what your family's telling you? Do you trust what you see on the television? Do you trust what you see on Facebook or YouTube or Google? And they're great sites, and there's really good information out there, but there's also a lot of disinformation. And so everything can get distorted, and it becomes really difficult. And I think in the end, people sometimes do feel completely overwhelmed and just think, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to go, and gut instinct.
One of the challenges that having the data that the internet and other sorts of sources now provide is the sheer mass of data that there is to deal with. And, despite what you often hear on sort of TV documentaries about the sort of phenomenal grandeur of the human brain and all the millions of cells and connections and so on, it's hard to remember a telephone number without writing it down. And, there are really very severe limits on the amount of information that we can take in at any one time. And certainly that's borne out by the research showing that indeed people, when they're trying to make a decision about something, really cannot kind of crunch up all the data that there's there. One of the reasons why making an important decision is so stressful, because you're trying to deal with something that basically you can't deal with. So that is a challenge. The brain essentially looks as though it makes decisions on the basis of maybe one or two features intuitively. Often you'll see people stroking their chin and claiming to be, very conscientious about evaluating all the evidence in front of them. Unfortunately, the research suggests that even when you have that feeling that that's what you're doing, the actual ultimate choice that you make will have in fact been determined by one or two features.